How many lies have you told today? Come on, tell the truth. Whether it's fake news or little white lies, everybody apparently does it in private, in public, in professional spheres. But could it eventually undermine our institutions, our society, our democracies? Mexico is paying for the wall. China does not have oil and gas. Just two of the outrageous statements made by the US President Trump. At best, both false, at worst, outright lies. And he's told countless others, some suggest as many as 10,000 since he's been in office. It doesn't seem to bother his supporters, and some analysts say it doesn't matter.
There was a time when lying in public office was seen as a cardinal sin. But US President Donald Trump has made more than 12,000 false statements, according to the Washington Post. Yet he's not the only one. Research has shown 90% of children have learned the concept of lying by the age of 4. And according to one study, 60% of adults cannot have a 10-minute conversation without lying at least once. Some believe lying can be good for us, helping to avoid confrontations at work, at home, and in our social relationships. One university professor recently made headlines when he began teaching students how to lie, hoping to inspire creativity. But ethics experts argue that misinformation from top leaders or the dark corners of the internet could erode trust in institutions, divide society, and even undermine democracy. According to a study by the Pew Research Center, almost 70% of Americans feel fake news and misinformation has greatly affected their confidence in government institutions. So if lying has become the new normal, what does that say about us?
Let us start the conversation. Why do we let people lie to us then? Why do you think?
I think it's because people like to hear things that make them feel good. So there's an element that says, okay, it might not be true, but if I say this to somebody, you are the most beautiful person in the world. Now, that may be subjective, but it still makes them feel good, even though you actually think there's somebody else who's more beautiful. But to your earlier point, I think there are lies that are effectively adapting the reality, and there are lies that are trying to completely ignore fact. And I think it's when we get to the point that the lies are ignoring the facts, your comment in terms of Donald Trump, China does not have oil or gas. That is either a fact, they do or they do not. It is not subject to debate. And I think when we get to the point that the lies are actually denying provable facts, that is perhaps when the danger becomes greatest.
And again, this is for any one of you, that a good liar will always be more successful than somebody who cannot do anything other than tell the truth, a la George Washington.
I would disagree with that, because in terms of our conversation about lying, we're looking at it from the perspective of the liar, and just the simple concept, not just in terms of lying, but in terms of anything we do. As human beings, my view, and I'm not a neuroscientist, is we work on a simple basis of a cost-benefit analysis. If I do X, what is the benefit to me of doing that versus what is the potential cost of doing that? If I'm going to lie to somebody, what is the risk of me being caught out? What is the benefit if I get away with it? And if I do get caught out, what's the penalty going to be? And I think if you look at how people operate generally in society, and particularly in organisations, there is a quite clear danger point at which the people on the receiving end will work out they have been lied to. And if you keep lying, if you are dealing with reasonably intelligent people within an organisational context, they will suss it out.
Mentality too, isn't it? People like to feel associated with other people, yeah? And therefore, if their opinions are reinforced by seeing that there's a group out there that says, this is fantastic, then they will follow that rather than the others. So
absolutely. But isn't there a point about the states in terms of the media structure in the states, in the US, and how the media is paid for and operates? encourages people to go into those tribes because there will be a radio station that panders to a specific opinion that then gets its advertising revenue by pushing that opinion further, and then only those people who hold that opinion will listen to that station, so that actually you have two different groups of people who are hearing two different versions of the truth. And to some degree, luckily in UK, because our media system here does not operate like that, in most cases you are getting from the channels in UK a reasonable spectrum of different opinions. But one of the things I think that is also critical is politicians are now lying more. But when we look at that through the lens of what we expect within our family world, would you be happy to say to your children, well, it's okay, the politicians can lie, so of course you can lie to me?
Chris, I want to ask you in just a minute whether it's more okay if a lie is amusing than if it's straightforward or harmful.
The corporate world is exactly that, top. If we look at some of the top chief executives who have derailed, Carlos Ghosn at Nissan and others, they got to the point that they lied because they believed that they were above the requirements of other people, because they had reached that level of superiority. So I don't think it's necessarily about people feeling inadequate. I think it's also about people feeling they don't have to stick to the same rules as everyone else.
Yeah. Chris, I wanted to come back to you because there was one lie that struck me as being very successful because it was amusing, but it has stuck for a long time. And this was one that was planted by Alistair Campbell during John Major's years in Downing Street. And that was that the then Prime Minister tucked his shirt into his underpants. He had no idea, but it has stuck. Do we have to have an element of, I don't know, just wickedness as well as awful badness to tell a really good lie that sticks?
Because there is an element of believability, and it is slightly humorous, and because the damage that that lie causes is not something that is absolutely horrendous, then it's a nice one-liner, it sticks in people's minds. In terms of the sort of output of the line, what I find is interesting, the trust element. You know, what does it do for trust? And the statistics, I think, from a sort of study in this country are interesting. So, for example, nurses, doctors, judges, military professionals, the police and teachers are trusted by at least 75% of the population. Estate agents, politicians, business leaders are trusted by less than 35% of the population.
And it used to be journalists as well.
And it used to be journalists as well.
Goodness knows why we've gone up in some people's estimation.
At its most basic, I think, going to the point about emotion and whether you can do it and the cost benefit, Trump does it because he can get away with it. And you notice that when he gets caught, there is a backtrack. I never said that, it was not, etc. For most people in everyday life, let's get to the common sense level. If you have a friend who is constantly lying to you and your friends, they don't actually stay being a friend for much longer.
And I lived with somebody like that once. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm going to have to round it up because we've come to the end of the discussion. Right. Listen, absolutely fabulous to have you on, and I mean that as much at the end of the programme as I did at the beginning. Greg, thank you in the United States. I've got a list here of some of the best things, attributes that good liars can have. I will just end with this. Natural performers, original, rapid thinking, good at acting, and not experiencing guilt, fear, or delight. I'm sure we can all recognise people that we know, or at least think we know, in those descriptions. Thank you to my guests in the studio. Thank you to Greg. Thank you for watching. From me, David Foster, and the Roundtable team. Goodbye for now.